Welcome to the new video of Neurophilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The lie of being lost. You keep saying you are lost. You say you do not know where to begin, that nothing makes sense, that every option feels confusing, and no path feels safe. You repeat it so often that it starts to sound like a fact, almost like a diagnosis, and in a strange way, the sentence becomes comforting because if you are lost, then you are not responsible for movement yet. You can stay suspended. You can delay the moment where you must choose, act, and risk being wrong. But what if this feeling is not the truth? What if I am lost is not a real description of your situation, but a protective story your mind tells to keep you from crossing a line you already know is there? Not a deliberate lie, not something you consciously invented, but a lie created by the ego. A carefully designed shield that blocks you from something more threatening than confusion. Transformation. Carl Jung did not treat being lost as a neutral condition. He saw it as a defense mechanism, a smokescreen, a sophisticated psychological strategy that keeps you circling instead of confronting what is quietly demanding your attention. Because if you are honest, there is usually a strange contradiction inside your confusion. You claim you do not know what to do, yet there is a part of you that flinches whenever you get close to the truth. A part that tightens up, goes numb, or becomes restless the moment you consider a certain choice. That reaction is not random. It is the unconscious responding, and the unconscious is not silent. It has been trying to guide you for a long time, not with clean, logical sentences, but with signals. A repeating discomfort when you are living in a way that does not fit, a recurring dream that feels like a message, a sense of heaviness that appears in the same places, around the same people, inside the same routines, a quiet inner whisper that returns again and again, even when you try to drown it out. It is not always loud, but it is persistent. It keeps pointing, it keeps nudging, it keeps reminding you. The problem is not that you do not know. The problem is that you do not want to pay the price of knowing, because deep down, you understand what that direction demands. It demands you leave something behind. It demands you stop protecting an identity you have spent years building, an identity that may have kept you safe, helped you survive, earned you approval, or made you feel valuable. The dependable one, the people pleaser, the stable professional, the obedient child, the perfect partner. The version of you that knows how to behave, how to be liked, how to avoid conflict, how to keep everything together. Following the truth often means letting that version die. And that is why I am lost becomes such a convenient sentence. It sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like you are simply waiting for clarity, but beneath it, something else is happening. You are stalling. You are bargaining with life. You are asking for a path that guarantees no pain, no embarrassment, no regret, no criticism, no uncertainty. A path where you can become new without losing the old. A path where you can change without paying for change. That path does not exist. So the mind creates a substitute story, confusion. It makes you feel like you are stuck because life is complicated. But often, life is not complicated. The truth is simple. What is complicated is what the truth threatens to destroy. Your comfort, your image, your certainty, your familiar suffering. That is why, in Jung's view, the state of being lost is often not a lack of direction. It is fear of initiation, fear of stepping into a new chapter where you cannot hide behind old labels. Fear of walking into an unknown version of yourself where you will not be able to control how others respond. Fear of taking the first step and realizing that the world will not pause to validate you. So here is the hard shift. You are not lost, you are terrified. Terrified not because you are weak, but because starting requires a symbolic death. It requires an ending. It requires you to stop being who you have been. And the ego would rather keep you confused than let you transform. Fear, not confusion. Once you stop believing the story that you are lost, another truth begins to surface. What has been holding you in place is not confusion. It is fear. Fear disguised as thinking. Fear dressed up as caution, preparation, and the search for certainty. This disguise is convincing because it feels intelligent. It feels responsible. But psychologically, it serves a very specific purpose. It prevents action while allowing you to feel justified. You tell yourself you are still figuring things out. You say you need more information, more clarity, more time. You research endlessly. You plan. You wait for the right moment. But notice something important. While you are planning, you are not living. While you are analyzing, you are not choosing. And while you are waiting for clarity, you are postponing responsibility. Carl Jung understood this pattern well. He observed that the ego has an intense need for safety and predictability. It wants guarantees before it moves. It wants to know the outcome before it begins. But life does not work that way. Real movement always begins in uncertainty. And because the ego cannot tolerate that uncertainty, it creates a substitute activity, endless mental motion without real-world change. This is why thinking can become a trap. You feel active because your mind is busy, but nothing in your life actually shifts. You call this being careful or being realistic. Yet underneath it is a deeper motive. As long as you do not act, you cannot fail. As long as you do not choose, you cannot be wrong. As long as you stay in thought, you remain protected from consequences. Fear is not just the fear of making a mistake. It is the fear of losing control over how your life unfolds. When you take the first real step, you step into a space where outcomes are no longer fully manageable. You might disappoint people. You might struggle. You might discover limits you did not want to see. And the ego reacts to this possibility with resistance. That resistance often sounds like logic. It says, this is not the right time. It says, I need to be more prepared. It says, I just need one more sign. But these thoughts are not neutral. They are strategies. They keep you in a familiar pain rather than allowing you to face the discomfort of growth. Jung was clear about one brutal truth. Clarity comes after action, never before it. You do not act because you feel ready. You feel ready because you have acted. Every meaningful change in a person's life begins in doubt, fear, and a sense of disorientation. The ego interprets this as danger. The psyche interprets it as initiation. This is why the beginning feels so uncomfortable. Starting something real often feels like moving away from everything you know. It feels like you are betraying your old self. It feels reckless, even when it is necessary. And because of that, fear convinces you that staying still is the wiser choice. But stagnation has a cost. While you are waiting, your inner tension grows. The gap between who you are and who you know you could be becomes heavier. You may not notice it at first, but it shows up as irritability, numbness, anxiety, or a vague dissatisfaction that never fully goes away. This is not confusion. It is the psyche pushing back against prolonged avoidance. Jung called the process that resolves this tension individuation. It is the movement toward becoming your true self rather than the self shaped by expectation, conditioning, and fear. Individuation does not begin with certainty. It begins with a step taken despite uncertainty, with a choice made while fear is still present. You will not feel calm when you begin. You will feel exposed. You will feel like you are making a mistake. You will feel as though you are walking away from the life you understand. And that is exactly what makes the step real. So the question is no longer, why am I confused? The real question is, what am I afraid of losing if I move? When you answer that honestly, confusion starts to dissolve. What remains is fear, and fear, unlike confusion, can be faced. The three inner terrors. If fear is what truly blocks you, then the next step is to understand what that fear is made of. Not in vague terms, but precisely. Carl Jung believed that paralysis is rarely caused by one simple emotion. It is usually the result of several deep, unconscious terrors working together. These fears do not announce themselves clearly. They hide behind logic, caution, and patience. But once exposed, their power weakens. The first terror is the death of your current identity. Starting something new is never just about beginning. It is about ending. When you move toward a different path, you are not simply changing habits or circumstances. You are threatening the version of yourself that has been defined by your past choices. The role you have played, the label others recognize, the image you have learned to protect. If you leave a career, you are not only changing your job, you are killing the identity that came with it. The reliable professional, the successful one, the one your family points to with pride. That identity may have cost you years of effort, sacrifice, and compromise. Letting it go feels like erasing proof that your past struggles meant something. For the ego, this feels unbearable. Jung observed that the ego would rather endure familiar suffering than face necessary annihilation. Even if the old identity is draining your vitality, it is known. It has structure. It gives you a place in the world. Losing it feels like falling into nothingness. So you hesitate, you delay, you tell yourself you are still deciding, when in reality you are mourning something that has not yet died. The second terror is total responsibility. As long as you say you are lost, responsibility remains blurred. You can point to circumstances, timing, lack of clarity, or external obstacles. You can believe that life has not yet revealed the path. This story protects you. But the moment you choose, that protection disappears. When you decide and act, you become the author of your life. If it works, the credit is yours. But if it fails, the blame is also yours. There is no longer a mystery to hide behind, no confusion to excuse inaction. Jung understood that many people fear responsibility more than suffering, because responsibility forces you to confront your own power, and power comes with the risk of regret. It is often more comfortable to live with the illusion that you are waiting than to accept that your life is shaped by your choices. Saying, "I am not ready yet," feels safer than saying, "I chose wrong." So you remain suspended, protected by indecision, while time quietly moves on. The third terror is the encounter with the unknown. This is the deepest fear of all. When you step onto your true path, you enter territory you cannot map in advance. You will meet emotions you have never fully faced. Parts of yourself you have ignored or suppressed will surface. You do not know who you will become, how you will change, or what you will lose along the way. For the ego, this uncertainty feels like a threat to survival. Jung wrote that the fear of the unknown is one of the main reasons people cling to miserable situations. A known misery feels safer than an unknown freedom. At least in suffering, you know who you are. These three terrors, death of identity, responsibility, and the unknown, form an invisible prison. They keep you circling the same questions, searching for answers you already possess. They make stagnation feel intelligent and fear feel like wisdom. Until you recognize these fears, you will keep renaming them. You will call cowardice caution. You will call avoidance preparation. You will call paralysis patience. Jung saw this as a form of neurosis, a suspension of life designed to protect the ego from transformation. But once these terrors are named, something shifts. You begin to see that the problem is not a lack of direction. It is the price that direction demands. And facing that truth is the first real crack in the prison walls. The hidden benefit of staying lost. At first glance, being lost feels like suffering. It feels frustrating, heavy, and exhausting to live in constant uncertainty. But Carl Jung warned that no psychological state persists without offering some hidden advantage. If a pattern continues for years, it is because, on some level, it is serving you. And the uncomfortable truth is this: staying lost protects you. As long as you tell yourself you do not know what to do, you are spared from making difficult choices. You do not have to confront the disappointment of others. You do not have to risk public failure. You do not have to test your abilities in reality and discover where you fall short. Confusion becomes a shelter. It keeps you invisible, untouched, and unchallenged. This is the shadow benefit of paralysis. Jung believed that much of human stagnation is driven by unconscious rewards. You may consciously hate feeling stuck, but unconsciously, being lost offers relief. It removes pressure. It allows you to postpone decisions that would force you to confront uncomfortable truths. While you remain undecided, nothing is final. Nothing is lost. Nothing is proven or disproven. Ask yourself honestly, if you remain lost forever, what would you never have to face? You might never have to admit that you hate the career you once defended. You might never have to disappoint your family by choosing a path they do not approve of. You might never have to risk your heart in a real relationship. You might never have to confront the fear that, even with effort, you might be ordinary. These are not small fears. They cut directly into your sense of worth. Remaining lost keeps all possibilities alive, but only as fantasies. While you do not choose, you can still imagine becoming anything. You can still believe you might one day write that book, move to another country, or reinvent yourself completely. This feels like freedom, but it is not. It is potential without embodiment, a life lived in imagination rather than action. Jung saw this state as particularly dangerous because it creates the illusion of movement. You feel as though you are working on yourself, thinking deeply, searching for meaning. But beneath the surface, nothing changes. Time passes, energy leaks away. The gap between who you are and who you could become widens, and that gap slowly turns into bitterness or despair. There is also another hidden benefit. Being lost protects you from responsibility. If you do not choose, you cannot be blamed. You can tell yourself that life simply has not revealed the path yet, that you are waiting for the right sign, that circumstances are not aligned. This story preserves your innocence. It allows you to see yourself as a victim of confusion rather than an active participant in avoidance. But this protection comes at a cost. The longer you stay lost, the more your psyche tightens. Jung believed that what is not lived consciously is lived unconsciously, often in destructive ways. Suppressed action does not disappear. It turns inward. It becomes anxiety, resentment, numbness, or a quiet sense that life is passing you by. The most painful truth is this: remaining lost allows you to avoid discovering who you are outside of other people's expectations. As long as you are undecided, you do not have to separate your own desires from what you were taught to want. You do not have to risk standing alone in your truth. Once this hidden benefit is exposed, the narrative of victimhood begins to crumble. You can no longer say you are stuck purely because life is unclear. You begin to see that, in some way, you have been choosing safety over truth. And that realization is uncomfortable, but it is also empowering, because if you are choosing to remain lost, then you are capable of choosing something else. The moment you see the benefit, the spell weakens. You are no longer trapped by confusion. You are standing at the edge of a decision, aware of both the comfort of staying and the cost of never leaving. The first real step. Once the illusion of being lost collapses, nothing dramatic happens on the outside. There is no thunder, no sudden clarity, no perfect confidence. What appears instead is something far quieter and far more demanding. The need to act, not heroically, not flawlessly, but consciously. This is where many people stumble again. They believe that once they understand their fear, they must immediately transform everything, quit the job, end the relationship, start the project, burn the old life down in one decisive moment. But Carl Jung understood that this impulse itself often belongs to the ego. The ego loves extremes. It either freezes completely or tries to leap too far, too fast, sabotaging the process and retreating back into paralysis. Real transformation does not begin with dramatic gestures. It begins symbolically. The psyche responds to movement, not declarations. It does not need grand promises or motivational speeches. It needs proof, even in the smallest form, that you are willing to step out of avoidance and into truth. Jung observed that a single honest act, if done consciously, can shift the entire inner balance of a person. The first step must be small enough not to overwhelm you, but real enough to carry meaning. It should feel slightly uncomfortable, slightly exposing, and undeniably sincere. Not something you can explain away as just thinking, not something you can do automatically. It must represent the beginning of the path you have been avoiding. This might mean researching a different career quietly, without telling anyone yet. It might mean writing a letter you never intend to send, saying everything you have been swallowing for years. It might mean visiting a place that has always called to you, even if you do not know why. The form does not matter. The intention does. This step functions as a ritual, a message sent directly to the unconscious that says, "I heard you. I am willing to begin." And when that message is received, something subtle but powerful shifts. The stagnation loosens. The inner pressure changes direction. You may not feel relief immediately, but you will feel movement, and movement is what breaks the spell. Jung was clear about one essential truth. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action. Clarity is the consequence of action. You do not wait for the light to turn on before stepping forward. The light turns on because you stepped forward. The second step reveals itself only after the first has been taken in the dark. This is why waiting for certainty keeps you trapped. Certainty belongs to endings, not beginnings. Beginnings are marked by fear, doubt, and vulnerability. If you feel those things, it does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something real. There is also a deeper danger in waiting too long. Jung warned that when a person refuses conscious change, the unconscious will eventually force it. What is avoided voluntarily returns as crisis. Anxiety, depression, breakdown, or sudden life collapse are often the psyche's last attempts to push a person toward transformation. This is not punishment, it is correction, the soul demanding to be lived. Acting even in a small way is how you avoid being dragged. It is how you choose initiation over collapse. So the question now is simple, but not easy. What is the smallest step you can take today that symbolizes the beginning of the path you already know you must walk? Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Do it quietly if you must, imperfectly if necessary. Fear does not disqualify you, it accompanies you. The moment you act, you are no longer someone who is lost. You become someone in motion, and once movement begins, the path starts to reveal itself, one honest step at a time.